If you're a Call of Duty fan who's tried other Battle Royale games but is yet to fall in love with it, you might be wondering if this is the game that will change your mind. As a long-time Call of Duty fan, I fell into this category. I've tried various Battle Royale games, including Fortnite, but ultimately I'm too impatient. My desire to run and gun, which has been ingrained in me over 10 years of playing Call of Duty, just isn't a good fit for these types of games. Call of Duty has historically been a twitchy reaction-based arcade shooter. Battle Royale, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of this. Its gameplay is slow, methodical, and often highly cooperative. Matches are predominantly won through a combination of strategy and patience rather than who saw who first or who has the superior dexterity. So what happens when you put these two things together, and does it add anything new to the Battle Royale experience? The best description I can give of my experience with Blackout is that it's the least amount of fun I've had in a good game, and that includes the critically acclaimed God of War, which I just thought was a grindy looter.
Oh look, another legendary item.
Blackout is also the least amount of fun I've ever had playing a Call of Duty game. Now to be clear, I don't think that it's bad. In fact, I think it's the most polished Battle Royale game I've played so far. It looks good, relatively speaking, it runs well, and it manages to retain that Call of Duty je ne sais quoi. Treyarch set out to combine the biggest first-person shooter in the industry with the most popular game mode in recent memory. And by all accounts, they've not only done that, but they've seemingly managed to catch lightning in a bottle. The problem is that in spite of everything Blackout gets right, I just don't like it. That statement may sound like a contradiction in terms, so let me unpack that for you. As I've gotten older and my spare time has become less frequent, I've generally gravitated towards games that can be enjoyed in small blocks of time. If I've only got a spare 20 minutes or I need to quickly wrap up my game time, for example, Call of Duty's 5 to 6 minute team deathmatches are a perfect fit. Games that require a lot of investment or that can't be dropped in an instant are much less appealing, particularly if quitting out loses you a ton of progress. Battle Royale games have a lot of downtime. For me, this feels like padding in between what I enjoy most about shooters. Instead of focusing on breakneck action, these games have you looking for items, planning your next move, and generally laying low until the right time to strike. This slow pace is an inherent component of this genre, and for many it's also one of the main attractions. But for me, this slow pace gets in the way of what I really want to do, which is the shooting part. To give you an idea of how much action there is in a typical Blackout match, here's an example. Sandy Ravage posted his stats at the end of the beta showing, amongst other things, the number of kills he got, the number of wins he had, and the amount of games he played. While 279 kills with a 9.0 KD average from 78 games might sound impressive, and it is, it's nothing compared to how many kills he would average in a mode like Team Deathmatch. Okay, so let's do a little math to back up that claim. Let's say that on average Sandy gets 15 kills per game in Team Deathmatch. In reality it's probably double that, but just bear with me. If he played 78 games at 15 kills per game, that's 1,170 kills. At 279 kills over 78 games in Blackout, he's averaging less than 4 kills per game. And that doesn't even take into consideration that the average game of Team Deathmatch takes less than half the time a game of Blackout does. If you're like me and rapid gun-on-gun gameplay is the main attraction in a shooter, then it's more than likely that Blackout will frustrate you. Even if you really like Call of Duty, I'm not convinced that this will be enough for you to enjoy this different style of gameplay. Strangely, I enjoy H1Z1, which by comparison is essentially a very low budget version of the same thing, so I was expecting to enjoy this much more than I did. I can't really put my finger on what H1Z1 does better than Blackout. Maybe it's the third person perspective, maybe because it's simpler, I'm not exactly sure. By all measures, I should love Blackout. It looks and sounds like a Call of Duty game aside from the giant map, it feels like a Call of Duty game in the way that weapons handle and how movement works. It just doesn't play anything like a traditional Call of Duty. One thing I have noticed is how different my approach is to playing both games. I think because I'm so used to how a traditional Call of Duty plays, I can't switch off the instinct to rush around, and I don't want to. Call of Duty satisfies a particular itch, and as hard as I try to scratch it with Blackout, it fails to satisfy. I don't want to play a slow, methodical Call of Duty, that's not what Call of Duty is to me. In the same way that God of War isn't an RPG.
Is it just me, or do all of these things look the same?
When I say Blackout is a good game, what I mean is it's well conceived, and many of its design choices are smart and they work well together. The beta wasn't without issues, of course. This is what betas are designed to iron out after all, but for the most part it was a pretty solid experience. What's really impressive is that the whole thing runs on the Call of Duty engine. I honestly didn't think it would be possible given that the multiplayer maps from every previous game have been small. Even Ghost's oversized maps don't come close to the scale of Blackout. The map isn't just huge either, it's superbly designed with tons of elevation and different types of terrain. There are huge structures like a dam and a cargo ship to explore, and getting around is made easy with your wingsuit and the various vehicles. Incorporating locations from the previous games was a stroke of genius too. These areas act as hotspots of activity and can provide some of the best loot too. The Asylum from World at War in particular is definitely a highlight. Weapons operate a little differently to previous games and now fire projectiles instead of using hit scans. This means that you have to lead targets beyond close range, and long distance targets are much harder to hit. This doesn't make weapons any less fun to use though, and the increased size of the map sets up some pretty awesome long range engagements. Of course, sniping is an extremely common and important part of combat, given how often you'll encounter an enemy way off in the distance. That being said, I didn't come across any no-scoping BS, and sniping overall seemed far less annoying than I thought it might be. There's an almost overwhelming amount of weapons strewn around the map to find, and most of them can be customized. There's also a huge number of attachments that offer various performance enhancements. This makes each game feel vastly different to the last, and it forces you to try out new weapons and attachment combinations. With so much variety and so many locations to explore, the replayability here is high. Now, to say that everything that Blackout does is objectively well executed isn't true. There are problems with the UI, such as labels being too small. There are issues with how you pick up items, weapons and armor are far from balanced, and the land vehicles have some of the weirdest controls I've ever come across. But when you look at the big picture and compare it to similar games, Blackout stands well above much of the competition. It's also hard to imagine that Treyarch won't be able to get on top of most, if not all, of the issues before launch. I wanted to like Blackout. I still want to like it. Everyone seems to be on the hype train talking about how amazing it is. And although I can see the magic, I'm just not feeling it. If Battle Royale is your thing, definitely keep an eye on this when it launches. It might be one of the most expensive ways to play this style of game, but judging by the reaction so far, it seems like this one might be a winner. However, if you haven't enjoyed Battle Royale so far, I'm extremely skeptical that this is going to change your mind. Considering I'm not really into zombies and I didn't think much of the regular multiplayer that Black Ops 4 has, I think unfortunately this year, sorry Call of Duty, but it's a pass for me.
One down.